Users of Reddit, what's the scariest moment of your life? One day I was in a parking garage across the street from a courthouse after filing a document. I'm a paralegal. As I'm me, I get off the elevator where I think my car is parked and it's nowhere to be found. This is not unusual, so I start wandering around pushing the button for it to beep. After about a minute of wandering, I notice a guy walking around too. He doesn't appear to be following me, but he's giving me the creeps anyway, so I keep an eye on him. There is no one else on that level except him and me. Finally I determine that my car must not be on that level and get in the elevator to go down a level. I get off the elevator and keep an eye on it for a second. The guy doesn't appear, so I brush it off as my paranoia. I start walking around pushing the button again. Then, as I turn the corner, there's the guy again. So, this time I know he's following me. I head for the elevators, then I notice that he's heading that way too and is on par to cut me off, and I start to panic. Again, we're alone on the level. Just then the elevator doors open and two guys in suits get off. I run up to them and say, "There you guys are. I've been looking for you all over this level and the one above. Where the hell did you guys park?" And I laugh. The guys kind of look at me weird, but, to their credit, they don't even blink, and one of them responds with, "Oh, sorry, we're on this level but we brought Tom's car instead of mine and I forgot to tell you. We're parked over here," and they lead me away. I see the guy that had been following me stop, stare, then start down the stairs beside the elevator. Once he leaves I tell the guys what had happened and they helped me find my car. It was on the first level, I just never got close enough to hear it beep, and I was safe. To this day I know that guy was waiting for me to find my car so he could do something nefarious. I avoid parking garages at all costs now. If I'm forced to park in one, I take a picture of where I park so I don't get lost anymore. I also carry pepper spray on my keychain. I was walking to school in middle school and this lady with a car pulled over next to me and called me Linda. That's not my name, but was close enough. I looked up. She apologized and explained she thought I was her grandkid. Then she offered me a ride to school. Except that I was already standing on the school grounds. I had a half-block walk before I needed to turn to walk into the building. When I said no, she tried to demand I get into the car. I said no thanks and took off running. It occurred to me much later that she probably had no intention of dropping me off at school. Back when I was about 17 and invincible, I got tired of waiting for the bus on my way home from school and started hitchhiking. A scruffy-looking guy in a beat-up pickup truck pulled over and I got in. He wouldn't look directly at me, but had a kind of creepy smile on his face. I told him I needed to go straight down the street about 12 blocks, but about 6 blocks later he gets into a turn lane and puts on his turn signal. I finally realized something was up and my radar was going off like crazy. I saw some random guy on the street waiting at the crosswalk, so I started waving at him like crazy. Then I said, "Oh man, I'm in trouble now. That's my brother and he's going to be asking me who I was with in the truck." The random guy was looking at us strangely, probably trying to figure out who I was and why I was waving at him. The creepy guy's smile leaves his face and he turns off the turn signal. He drove straight down the street and I had him drop me off 3 blocks away from my home. I have no idea why it occurred to me to start waving at the guy, but I really think it saved me from some big trouble. Late at night, I was sitting in my car waiting for my boyfriend to finish his shift. A guy walks past and we make eye contact. I feel this sense of danger but figure I'm overreacting. A few minutes pass and the fear won't go away. I finally decide to move my car away from the edge of the parking lot to the front of the restaurant in the customer parking area. I start up my car and just as I'm putting it into drive, the guy rushes out from behind and tries to yank open my door, pulling on it really hard. I hit the gas and he trails me for a second, then hits my window with a rock. I keep going and he throws the rock at me then runs away. I was shaking so badly I could barely steer. Pretty sure he was sneaking up on me just as I decided to start my engine. I planned to visit my dad in the afternoon. Called him in the morning to ask if he needed anything because I was about to go to the store anyway and could easily pick up some things for him. He didn't answer. A little weird for him but not too uncommon. But I had that thought in the back of my head. So I tried again like 30 minutes later. Again, nothing. Neither landline or mobile. So I decided to drive over there early and check. Can't really explain it but I just knew that something had happened. Found him dead in his house. He fell and cracked his head open. To this day I don't actually know what was worse, finding him like this or the 30-minute long drive where the feeling grew that I was going to walk into something like that. Not me but my father-in-law. He woke up one morning and asked my mother-in-law to find their kids as he had a bad dream and felt something was very wrong. Mom-in-law got a hold of my wife and one of her brothers but could not reach the oldest. Unfortunately, it turns out that he had been murdered and dismembered the night my wife's father had that dream/bad feeling. It was due to drugs and gangs. He was tortured before he was killed. The perps responsible have been caught and are serving life sentences, so some justice was served but not enough. I was home alone and someone rang my bell door. It was dark and I could see a person, but I was unable to see his face, only like a shadow. I didn't open the door because he never answered, so I went back to playing. However, my dog would look straight at the door like he knew something was not right. After like 2 hours my parents arrived and told me there are 2 police cars on our street. Apparently, that person was a burglar and he knocked out one of my neighbors and stole from his house. This happened 2 years ago, but I still feel unsafe because I am probably the only one that was able to see his face. A co-worker asked me for a ride home, at night. I felt really weird about him, like a creepy feeling, so I said I couldn't and asked loudly if one of our coworkers could take him. I was the only female working there. It was a kitchen. Months later, after he had already quit, I found out he had been in jail and was a convicted rapist. I work in housing. Whenever a neighbor or family member wants us to do a welfare check on a single tenant, we all get that feeling. We're always at least 2 days too late. When I was in college I worked night shift. I got home to my studio apartment around 3 a.m. and immediately hopped in the shower. After I got out I realized I hadn't locked my front door, so I locked it and sat down at my desk still in my towel. My doorknob starts turning less than 5 minutes later. I panic as the door is about 4 feet from where I'm sitting. I sat there frozen until the knob stopped turning and then I got up to look through the peephole. At least 3 men were walking around trying to open doors. Their faces weren't covered. I called the police and gave a description. The next day the apartment alerted us about several burglaries in our apartment complex. I am a petite female. I still shudder to think what would have happened if my door had been unlocked. My husband calling me to tell me his brother killed his parents and that I needed to get the dogs and myself out of the house immediately in case his brother was on his way to our house. I was incredibly fortunate that a neighbor let me hide the dogs in her garage and come in until my husband gave me the all clear to go home. My son had his first seizure while I was driving. He was in the back seat and I heard a noise. I looked in the rearview mirror and he was convulsing with blood running out of his mouth. Then he collapsed. I thought he had died. To this day, I don't know how I was able to get off the freeway, call 911 and check his pulse. He was 7 years seizure-free on November 29th, but that one day changed my life forever. A co-worker and friend severed an artery in his arm when a jagged piece of metal hanging off of a car door slipped from the stand it was resting on. He came into the room I was in screaming for help. Every pump of his heart sprayed blood. While everyone else stood frozen, I somehow had the peace of mind to rip off my belt and apply it as a tourniquet. The EMT staff that arrived as well as the doctors that eventually saved his arm said he would have absolutely bled to death had I not applied the tourniquet. I worked in a bank. Man came behind the teller line and put a gun against my stomach and robbed the bank. It was surreal. I remember everything about how he smelled and his voice. Caught a guy masturbating outside my bedroom window. Happened about 5 years ago and I, had my own room in the apartment I rented, and friend had the other room. My apartment was the basement, so my window was about level with the ground outside. This happened 3 years ago. I was 12 and going from 6th to 7th grade and knew someone who was 18. He started to try and get closer to me, getting way over my comfort zone. One night I was laying awake in my bed, cause insomnia, and I hear footsteps coming up to my room. I got scared and pretended to be asleep. He comes into my room and checks if I'm asleep, then starts putting something around my face to, I guess, keep me from yelling if I started to. Then he did shit to me I never want to relive. I still see his face when I close my eyes and can never get a good night's sleep.